Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at, everybody. Welcome in to the IDP Plus Mailbag Show. He's at Jolo63 on X, Joe Harlow. I'm at JFryeDP on X, Justin Frye. Give us a follow if you don't already. How you doing this morning, Joe? Or afternoon, I guess.
I am doing all right. How about yourself?
Tired, but here.
Feel you there. Feel you there.
Ready for the draft. Stop talking about what could happen and start talking about what did happen and what we think about it.
Yeah, can't wait to see how wrong my mock draft that I put out yesterday was.
Yeah, speaking of which, we'll get back to that in just a second. But first off, as always, ask us questions as we run along. We'll get to as many as we can. We can get any questions in the mailbag this week, but submit them to mailbag@idpguys.org. Hopefully we get a bunch in this week with a whole bunch of rookie draft questions because I'm excited for the draft starting Thursday night. And go check out the website, the Discord server. All sorts of great writers, great content coming out daily. I know got a couple we just had our one of our guys put out his first article, his top 72 big board, Ricky Rodriguez. We've got a bunch of post-draft analysis. Like I believe it's dropping Friday morning, Saturday morning, Sunday morning for each of the 3 days of the draft. Should be all sorts of great stuff coming. And you can ask individualized questions on Discord to all of our great staff writers, wherever you're looking for. With that, the main thing we wanted to kind of run through today is we've seen some other shows do this, and I have never actually seen an IDP show do this. Maybe they have. I just haven't seen it. But we're going to run through Joe's mock draft that he published. I think they came out yesterday.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, it's a 3-round mock draft, and then from there, hopefully we'll have enough time, we can kind of highlight how that would impact our draft boards in rookie drafts. So we each have a roughly 4-round, 12-team big board, I guess is the way to put it, kind of figured out. So everyone's values will change, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how landing spots affect what we think of different players.
Yeah, and big boards are pretty rough at this point. Just hard to go super deep into it, knowing that most likely won't end up great, but figured it'd be a fun exercise just to see right before the draft. Unless we want to get right into the bluey chatter again this week. Someone's doing it.
Still not there, so
soon. Anyway, like you said, before we get into it, want to talk about the rookie guide, which is out currently, $9.99 for a limited time, and you can download it. And yeah, over 100 profiles in there. Post-draft, we will be updating with landing spots, some further in-depth fantasy analysis. Yeah, get it now, again, for that limited time price of $9.99. And yeah. Now let's, I guess, get into my mock draft.
All right. So, the first 2 picks are relatively chalky. So, Caleb at 1 to the Bears makes a ton of sense. So we're going to kind of highlight it through a super flex, PPR, no tight end premium. I guess we'll call it IDP 1, 2, 3, like kind of a balanced IDP type scoring. Just kind of how we view these players based on that. I guess is how we'll set it up. So super flex, Caleb's 101, pretty straightforward there. I know there are people who have Marv up there. The value of the elite quarterback versus the value of the elite wide receiver, I don't know. I'm always going to lean towards the quarterback.
Yeah, same. I always will go quarterback there. Marvin's generational talent, but
which is why, I mean, if we want to talk boards, we'll get to who my number 2 is in a minute, but it is also not Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm pretty sure yours probably isn't either. without having looked. But
It is not. And my number one is actually not Caleb Williams, which, you know me, that's not a surprise. Especially mine is Drake Maye, which also factors in that in my mock he does end up in Minnesota. So that weapon, I think it's a 1A, 1B, really whatever flavor of ice cream you like. But I prefer the Maye flavor. But if Maye goes to New England, Washington, Caleb would be ahead of him even on my board.
so Daniel's 2 makes sense. Your first mix-up is at 3 with a pick.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy.
I told you my feelings offline already. So, DeJean McCarthy, 3 to the Pats. Yeah.
It was a gut feel. Just feels like a Patriot pick.
If they had him that much, I think it feels like a Bill Belichick pick. I don't know what the Patriot pick is minus Bill Belichick. So
that could be true.
And I do think my expectation is that ownership on down recognizes the need for the high ceiling quarterback, and Maye's arm, his mobility. I mean, I think his arm talent is better than McCarthy's, and that's the big thing there. Why I would, if I'm the Patriots, shoot for ceiling, because if you're gonna miss, you're gonna miss. Like, honestly, it's not even about picking the wrong quarterback. It's about putting the right structure in place around the quarterback to help the quarterback hit.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. If I was New England, I'm running so fast to the podium with Drake Maye. Like, again, he's my quarterback 1. I have him same tier as Caleb, multiple tiers above Jaden and McCarthy. That was just kind of a gut feel. And is there a little bit of dream casting and some clickbaitiness in there? Potentially. Maybe some subconscious stuff in there, but it's not something that would shock me. I do think Maye would be the right pick, though.
So with that, 104, Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals makes sense. Receiver 1 pretty easily, especially with Kyler. Even with your landing spot for one of these receivers, which we'll get to in just a second. 105, like you spoiled already, Drake Maye. The Vikings trade up, send their 2 firsts as well as a future first for 5 and a future 3. I like Maye in Minnesota. I wonder if they would have to send back that 3 or not from the Chargers side. But
yeah, I wasn't trying to get super spot on with the trades. Just felt like, might as well throw this in there because I don't know if 3 1s is what it is for 5. And looking at other mock drafts and stuff, that trade specifically has been just the 2 1s, which felt a little light.
Yeah. Giants take Malik Neighbors at 6. Makes perfect sense. I do question if Neighbors or Odunze will be their preferred target.
Yeah, it's a good question.
That's my biggest question with the Giants right now is, 1, will they trade up, I guess? And 2, if they don't trade up, which receiver do they prefer of the next 2?
Yeah, what do you think about that? I guess we can divert here and talk hypothetical. Like, do you think the Giants stick or try to trade up?
I would stick if I'm them. We'll get to who they pick in the second round, but like, I could see a scenario like that playing out. That would be pretty reasonable in my mind. I could see them trading back even and someone else coming up for one of these receivers. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think they're more likely to actually take Odunze than Neighbors at this point. But
do you think so? That was going to be my next question for you.
They have a whole bunch of smaller, shifty guys. Like, Neighbors is obviously bigger than some of like Wandale Robinson and those types, and probably shiftier too, to be honest. But if I'm them, I want that X receiver that they don't have. They've never given Jones. And if you're gonna try to run it back with Jones and Locke and possibly another quarterback that we'll talk about later. I'm getting them the best weapon I can to fit. And for me, that's Odunze for this fit specifically.
That's totally reasonable. I don't disagree. I just wonder if I think a lot of it's like Neighbors is very Stephon Diggsy, and it's like the Dable connection to that. I do think the Dunes makes more sense, but I don't know. There's also part of it with the Chargers, I think. I also believe they would. I don't think it's close. They would prefer Odunze over. I think they would clearly prefer Odunze over Neighbors. It's the Harbaugh system, the Roman system. They want that big receiver who will knock your head off as a blocker as well, which Odunze can do. Just, that seems natural, so it's interesting. But
yeah, so
Neighbors
all went 7 in this, and you had the Chargers trading back up with Atlanta to get their receiver. I'll be honest, in this one, I really don't like the landing spot. I know you love Herbert, you love Rome. I just don't see the target volume being high enough.
Why not?
Because I don't think they're going to throw it enough. That's not what they want to do.
I mean, at the same time, with Kaepernick, who had a very subpar accurate arm, they threw almost 30 times a game in the early 2010s, which was above average. And it's not like there's other guys there to take many targets, so I don't know. That would definitely be interesting. It's one that could bite for sure. But
I think it'll push him up more, and that one honestly I'm not a big fan of in general. Like I don't want the Chargers to take one up there. I think it hurts.
You don't want them. Yeah, I get that.
Let's see. You had the Bears trading back. The Raiders come up for an O-lineman. The Jets take Bowers, which is – so I was surprised you didn't give him a tackle, I'll be honest.
Yeah. This, especially in the first round, it was more what do I think would happen versus what I would do. I would take a tackle every day of the week as them. However, I think general manager Aaron Rodgers would like another weapon.
For me, I would have put, if I'm them, I'm going Fuaga or Fashanu, someone who I can play at guard year one and then kick outside to tackle.
I agree. I would totally have gone Fatanu or Fashanu as them, but it's not what I would expect to happen.
And then another surprise, you have Atlanta at 11 after they move back at 11, taking Byron Murphy, which I think is possible at this point. There's some smoke there that he could be the top guy for them. This would be interesting, though, because you do not have a defensive player going in the top 10.
I do not.
And I believe the record is 8 right now.
Yeah, I think so. 7 or 8.
So that would be a new record, which wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of people out there saying, like, there's just so few first-round caliber defensive players in this draft to begin with. So, but,
yeah. Where do you have, out of curiosity, where's Byron Murphy to you? Just, do you think that makes sense? Do you think it's a huge reach for them?
I think it makes a ton of sense. He does have that legit upside from a true defensive, like from an NFL standpoint, not an IDP standpoint. I mean, he does have an IDP too, but D tackles are even harder to predict than a lot of other defensive players. So
yeah,
I do think he's a hit. He would be my highest defensive player. But, I mean, even then, I'm still taking a bunch of defenders and some later round receivers over him. So
if, let's say, specifically on the IDP side, we're in like King's Classic scoring where there is a D tackle slot and they are boosted a bit, so their scoring is similar to that of edges. I think it was still a little lower, but
if you have to start one D tackle and they score similarly, he'd probably be in my first tier then. But right
Makes
now,
sense.
he's the first tier of that has edge or that has
Yeah.
defenders, which is actually tier 4 for me right now. But
So Justin's taking Byron Murphy over Caleb Williams. Got it. No. But yeah, no, I think, and that's if you don't have a D tackle spot, definitely taking the edges over him. But if you do have one, I think there's a reasonable chance he's 101 IDP wise. It'd have to be pretty heavily balanced, but there are scoring systems where that does exist.
we got a question.
Sweet.
Wide receivers. So Joe and I are going to disagree here. In a vacuum right now, I want Malik Neighbors. And Joe wants.
Honestly, in a vacuum, I totally understand the Malik Neighbors thing. For specifically fantasy, he probably is the choice right now. Just he does have that bigger play potential. Odunze is more of the high floor, lower ceiling. But I think it really depends on the team. If you need just a wide receiver 2 in there right now, I'm gonna go Odunze. But if you need someone to you need a Garrett Wilson type, just someone who can take over and blow up, then it's Neighbors. They're much closer fantasy-wise than they are NFL-wise for me. And very much will end up on the landing spot.
Let's see. So I had to scroll down to where my board was. We were at. Let's see if we can start moving a little. Edges. We got a couple edges next. Broncos take Verse. Bears take Turner. And just to group in, we'll go down to 19 where the Rams take Latu. Okay. Rank them. And are they all in the same tier for you?
So we have Verse with the Bronco. I would go Turner with the Bears first. Then, and he's top, just has the best running mate of the group, at least on the edge. So I think he can get a lot more cleanup work than any of the others. Latu versus Verse is difficult for me. Verse, but I would honestly probably go Latu over Verse, which I know you're going to disagree with, but Latu, while I'm very scared of the seemingly limited athletic ability, especially laterally and the medicals, I do think it's a really good spot. Defense is interesting, even with the new coordinator, and I think he just does have a higher upside. Verse, I don't see a huge fantasy upside in. I think he's going to be a great football player, but I don't see him as ever really a double-digit sack guy.
I mean, I disagree there. So I would put Verse and Latu similarly, and honestly, Turner, he's in the same tier for me, but he's a little ways further down. There's a few players I would take, whereas Verse and Latu, I think, are back to back.
Okay, I think in mine I had all 3 of them back to back, or pretty close to. Yeah, I had them right next to each other, but
so
yeah, it's close.
So 14 Saints Bashanu, good fit, good for the Saints. Quinion Mitchell to the Colts, good fit. We
don't care for IDP though.
Yeah, not unless you need to start cornerbacks, and even then he's a risk. I'd rather wait and take a 3rd or 4th round nickel corner.
Yeah. If you want to start a Colts outside corner in that spot, go with Juju Brents because he's going to get targeted more.
Yeah. Then Troy Patanu to the Seahawks, great fit.
Okay.
Old OC. Terrion Arnold to the Jags, makes a ton of sense. Samarius Mims to the Bengals, a lot of sense. Latu, we already talked about. And then 20, you got a big move. The Bills moving up 3 picks, 1, 4, and a future 3 to get to 20 for Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
Love the fit. Long term, I do have concerns. I guess they can bring him along slowly with what they have, but he's a little more unique than the rest of their guys. Because he's really the only true X I see on that roster.
Mm-hmm.
So I just I was hoping he might sit for at least a little bit, or maybe they'll let him
Yeah.
play and learn on the go because he's still a little raw. But I do think he belongs as the wide receiver 4. I was a little surprised you did it because I know that's not necessarily how you've got 4 and 5 pretty close.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think Thomas Jr. makes more sense with Buffalo than my number 4 receiver, and both those have very similar grades. And that's Adonai Mitchell, just to spoil it. But I think overall, pre-draft, not right now, but Brian Thomas, yeah, I don't know. Is he a downgrade from Gabe Davis, though? Like today?
no.
So I feel like they would have to play him and I feel like just letting him make mistakes and learn from it is they'd have to do. And I feel like he has a little more juice and weirdly some more consistency than Davis had. So
Yeah. I like it overall. Great for Dynasty. He would be pretty clearly my wide receiver 4. Even with the landing spot you have for Mitchell, which we'll get to.
I completely agree.
Casso, 21, Cooper DeJean. I assume he's playing corner more than safety. It'll be interesting to see how he played with the Packers. I do like it. The fit makes a lot of sense. And in big play leagues, he's in play there, but I think he's more of a ball hawking cornerback, more in the Travion Diggs role than a lockdown guy.
Mm-hmm. So, I think the hope there would be that he's in the slot or box area, like let him actually make some tackles and then also being their punt returner would be the ideal role. But he's one where he's still draft, but then be ready to cut bait with him if he's playing outside corner for them opposite Jari Alexander.
Yeah, and don't overdraft him.
Yeah. So, someone's taking him in the second round, let him do it.
Next up, speaking of AD Mitchell, 22, you have the Chiefs trading up with 2 3s to get up where Philly is and get AD Mitchell, who I guess would be a fairly straightforward 1-for-1 replacement for I'm blanking on his name.
Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Yeah. At least to start.
Yeah.
So
I really don't know how I feel about this pick, honestly.
It starts off. It would take him a little bit to develop. The Chiefs like to sit their guys for a little bit, but with the Rashee Rice pending suspension, would he get the opportunity? I don't know. Good long-term stash. Mm-hmm. He's at the very end of, I think it's tier 3 for me, but that's still, I think I have him 112.
Yeah, where did I lost my spot?
And that's only because there's a couple of good landing spots for a couple of running backs early enough that I'm willing to take them over him.
Yeah, so did you have it, or I guess I can look. You had it, Ryan Thomas, a couple other guys that Mitchell. Okay. I had them closer, but yeah, especially for year one. For year one, it's not close that it's Brian Thomas over Adonai in this case.
Yeah, I think it's Thomas Bowers and then a couple running backs and then him, if I remember it.
Yep.
The Chargers.
And I had all those players the same tier, just different order.
Yeah. 23 Chargers move back, still get JC Latham, which makes a ton of sense for them. Let's see. That would be a really good fit for those two with some of the other guys you gave them in this draft too. Chargers would be huge winners out of the draft based on the draft you gave them. We'll get to the other 2 names that they got shortly. Barton, Cowboys, great fit. Love it. Guyton, Commanders makes a lot of sense. They trade up with Miami to 25. Tampa, Jackson Powers Johnson makes a ton of sense as well. Lots of O-line. Should tell you. Yeah, good draft for him. Johnny Newton, D tackle to the Cardinals. I don't know how to feel about him, I'll be honest.
Really? I know you were really high on him earlier in the process.
He's on my board, but it's a little inconsistent. So
Yeah, I think the upside is definitely there. Like he can be a game wrecker. His film is awesome at a lot of points. I think if Byron Murphy didn't exist, he's a legit TT1 in a class, but yeah, there's some stuff there. I do think it makes a lot of sense for Arizona to shoot for him, or they just need talent somewhere up front. I know they signed a few guys in free agency, but they need someone who can be a difference maker. I think, especially their second first rounder, might as well take a shot for the Stars here.
Yeah, Steelers center, Zach Frazier, West Virginia makes sense. The Lions put Darius Robinson across from Aiden Hutchinson. I like it. I don't know what it does for his IDP value.
I don't really either. I don't think it's a huge. Okay, here's a question for you. What edge rusher, assuming that it's
there's guys in the second like smaller.
Say that one more time. Sorry.
There's guys in the second and third round I think are like similarly to Robinson.
I guess, yeah, question, assuming not the top three guys, so I guess between your Darius Robinson, Chop Robinson, whoever else, who would you like to see most UIs Aiden Hutchinson? Assuming they take one at 29 or trade back into the early mid-30s.
I would put Chop there. I don't know that that's what the Lions want. I do think Darius Robinson makes more sense for what the Lions want to do. But for IDP purposes, I think it would be more fun to see Chop on the other side getting single team. But yeah.
I completely agree with you. 100%. I have going into if you had to check the pre-draft edge article I actually had Chop as my number 2 IDP at the end. Was rich, but also upside shot. Last half much stuff in there, but yeah, I think Chop. I would love to see Chop with Hutchinson.
30 we get. 30 we get Suamatia. See if I butcher his name from tackle from BYU to the Ravens. Makes sense. Hate it because it doesn't fall at 34, but whatever.
Well, the Patriots aren't picking there anyway. Don't worry.
31. The Raiders trade up with the 49ers, 2 and a 3 for a 1 and a 4, and get Michael Penix, which makes sense. I think he goes higher than this in the draft, but we'll see.
He could go 13. He could go 53. I really don't know. Like nowhere in between would shock me.
And the Eagles moved back to 32 with the Chiefs and got Kool-Aid McKinstry, which makes a ton of sense for them. Let's see. Kicking off the second round, the Panthers take Chop Robinson. He would be edge 4 for me, and it would be pretty close, honestly, with him and Turner.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, he'd be in that tier with me, but I'm also much higher on Chop than you are. So
it's more, for me at least, it's more the drop off of where edges tend to produce. They typically they need the high draft capital.
Yeah,
like it's one that the NFL usually can get right, and when they get it right, it's good for IDP. So.
I know I've heard a lot of rumors that he could actually be the second edge rusher taken, that he could go a lot higher than people think. Which I tried to, I just couldn't find the right spot for him.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen any of that. So
really?
Yeah, the 34, the Niners trade in, or I guess the Niners trade Brandon Ayuk to the Patriots for 34 and a future 3 that can become a 2 with some sort of condition. Probably tied to the fact that he'll get a money extension. So, I mean, this would be fantastic for Ayuk. But since we're mostly talking rookies, TJ Tampa, good outside corner, be a good move for both teams-ish. I don't honestly love it I don't think Ayuk gets moved in general, but
Yeah, I would be surprised, especially without getting a 1 in there. But
Yeah.
if he does, I do think realistically this is about what they would get 2-2s for him.
Yeah, makes sense. I think their window is getting set to close. Same with the Bengals. Not necessarily close, but with the way the roster is currently constructed. So if I'm those teams, I'm running it back with those players, and then if I need to, I also have a 5th-year option. I think next year, and Higgins can get franchised again and then traded. And I see next year as the window to trade for those guys.
They're getting into a spot next year where they'll probably where Buffalo is this year.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Though I do expect that the Niners will actually move on from Devo and not from Ayuk.
That would make the most sense, but
so Wiggins to the Cardinals, love it. Unfortunately for IDP, doesn't really matter much. Jordan Morgan, Dolphins, great fit. Chargers, Junior Colson, first linebacker off the board at 37. Makes good sense. We'll get to there's 2 other linebackers if I remember right in this round, so we'll talk about it in a little bit. Kneeland, Western Michigan edge to Titans at 38. Interesting. Yeah.
I really like Kneeland there. I think he could be a really good running mate for Harold Landry. Just to add bigger, nastier edge. Maybe they're bringing that Ravens system over where they love those guys, whether it's Jadavian Clowney last year, Darius Smith in the past, Bernell McPhee, Judon, whoever is in that similar mold of player. So we'll take some time to develop, but
yeah.
he's someone. How high are you on a Kneeland?
I just didn't see enough on his film, and at a smaller school, I wanted to see him pop more. I'll be honest.
A lot of it not popping, I really think, is their defense was really bad. Just a bad scheme. The smaller school guys are always a big swing.
It's hard for me to take that big swing with a guy who does not have as much production as I would like at a small school. So,
I know I'm super high on him. I have him very certainly high on my big board.
Let's see. The Panthers at 39 take Lad McConkey. We have a lot of fun there. I don't love him with Deontay. I actually think there's a lot of smoke coming out right now about them taking Leggett, and that fit makes more sense to me because McConkey and Deontay are honestly, if you asked me who I could comp McConkey to for fantasy, like what you could be getting, it's probably Deontay Johnson.
My thought there was, I also don't love Leggett as a prospect. I think 30 in the 30s is significantly too early for him. But and then the thing they need most, they just need someone who can separate. I don't care if it's a little samey. You can put Deontay in the slot and Lad outside or switch it around. Just someone who can get open quickly. It's kind of what they need at this point, and then figure the rest out later. Yeah, they do need a legit X-type player.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Mix-a-Lot.
Braswell to the Commanders. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be above Kneeland, above Robinson for me. Because he should also see immediate playing time. Could be a sneaky Byron Young type, although I guess the early second round it's a little less sneaky than Byron Young was last year for the Rams. Haynes on the Packers makes sense. Andrew Phillips, the Texans would probably make him cornerback 1 for IDP drafts as a slot guy. So good fit there. Jaden Hicks on the Falcons. It's just they already have a couple safeties, so I'm just not sure how he fits.
Richie Grant got benched at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, and was awful and could get cut. So I think, and then DeMarco Hellman, I think, is the other strong safety. Bates is playing almost exclusively deep. So I think was my thought process for Hicks there.
Interesting. Okay.
So
New staff.
Yeah.
It's hard to take too much into last year.
That's true.
Polk on the Niners. I know you'd love this, especially without Uke there. Could slot right in as the X. I didn't see it on film.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. He's my wide receiver 6 going into the year, but
I see more Sutton than Ayuk.
That's fair. I still think a lot of it is just similar style. He's not nearly as explosive as Ayuk. Looking at athletic testing, Ayuk tested a lot more poorly than I thought he would have, but I still think it's a role that they will need, especially over the middle routes and deep shots. But.
Yeah. 45. Interesting. I wonder if they kick him into the slot. It would make some sense with Shaheed stretching the field. Olave could make some sense. Could be an interesting spot for him. I think he might be destined for a slot role, big slot. So could be a good fit. Pearsall and Indy with A-Rich is fun, reuniting. Be interesting to see how him and Downs get targets.
Yeah.
I like Pearsall quite a bit. I like Downs quite a bit. So curious.
Yeah. How would you rank those two if this happens in 46 Pearsall?
Downs versus Pearsall, you're saying?
Yeah.
I'd probably put them pretty similar. Unfortunately, it kind of kills both of them to the point where I'm not sure either gets enough targets to really matter. I think I would prefer Pearsall because Downs battled knee injuries in college and then battled knee injuries last year. So I think I would prefer Pearsall, but it's close.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Just the size thing. Pearsall's more likely to be more durable, frankly.
Yeah.
And higher draft capital, which isn't everything, but isn't nothing.
Yeah. I also think Pearsall is the one that fits better at flanker and Downs stays in the slot. Even though Pearsall can play the slot, I think he's the better Z.
I'd agree with you there as well.
So if they wanted to run some more 2 tight end sets, which they have, especially if Jelani Woods comes back healthy, they might do some more. And then you might see less Downs on the field.
Yeah.
Bo Nix to the Giants, I really like. I think he would be honestly, he might win the job. I know you're not a big Bo Nix guy, but
I'm also not a big Daniel Jones guy, so
you probably want Drew Lock to win the job.
Want him is too strong, but I do think Lock is the lesser of those evils. But I think it makes sense. They need something.
Franklin on the Jaguars is interesting. I see a lot of similar pieces then on the Jaguars with Frank. I don't see him as an X. I see him as a flanker, which is kind of Gabe Davis's role. Kirk's a better slot, and Zay Jones is a better flanker. So, I just wonder what the alignment would actually be for those guys.
Yeah, I could see them using Gabe a lot as the X, just bigger body with some over-the-middle catchability. Yeah. But it's samey, but they need something.
Can he win versus pressed man on the backside? I don't know.
He can 3 times a game and maybe get you 3 60-yard plays, but
yeah, but you want him to run like a little slant against the backside with. Yeah.
So Bo Nix is not a statue at all. That would be Michael Penix, but Nix runs around, if anything, too much. Just to counter that a little, Mr. Bix a lot, especially at Auburn. That was his big issue, is that he freelanced way too much.
Yeah, he's a very good athlete.
Yeah.
But I think will honestly be unlocked a little bit in the right scheme. I do think he can. If I had to pick like an NFL type comp for what he could be, maybe like an Alex Smith type.
Yeah, that makes sense. What was
He was pretty mobile, at least early on, before some of the injuries. But something like that, where he's putting up some rushing yards.
Yeah, let me double check what my comp for him was. Where did it go?
Just from like a fantasy perspective, more than like an NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see him doing a lot of this game manager things. But,
my NFL comp is Derek Carr, which Carr coming out was a pretty good athlete. He's one who you wish would run a little more, but somewhere on the Alex Smith, Derek Carr scale, I think you could legitimately see in a good offense.
Even like a early career Andy Dalton, I feel like ran a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good one too. But
I want to go back a little further, maybe Matt Hasselbeck, something like that.
Okay, interesting.
I think he was a better actual quarterback. Let's see. Bengals, Chris Jenkins. We got to speed through this so we can maybe get to our boards a little. Chris Jenkins, love the fit on the Bengals. 50. Peyton Wilson, linebacker 2 off the board. We'll talk about this in just a second. We've got to get back to there's a third one coming up.
Yeah.
Roman Wilson on the Steelers. This one, I heard someone say that he was in Jordan Reed's mock yesterday, today. He put Roman Wilson to the Steelers right here too, and people are listening to didn't like it, and I'm like, really? He feels like a perfect Deontay Johnson fill-in type guy. This would boost him up my board, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, when I was first making our board, I had him pretty low, and then I was like, wait, no, this is a really good fit.
I don't love the coordinator fit, but like in general, him as a player, as like either the flanker or the slot with Pickens, like that is, I mean, Tyler Lockett-esque, possibly, like the DK Metcalf, like that's kind of, I already made that comp with Lab McConkey, but like Wilson fits the same kind of archetype of receiver to me. So,
yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially as their second target, maybe even third target. I think you could get decent fantasy production out of him.
Yeah, he's probably a wide receiver 3 within a year. He's never going to have a high ceiling, but he's got a pretty good floor. He should see plenty of target volume there.
In a 3 wide receiver 2 flex league, I would love to have him on my team.
Yeah, or any kind of deeper league. He's pretty easily a second-round pick for fantasy. Rakestraw to the Rams, I like the fit. Worthy to the Eagles, great for real life. Tanks Worthy's value, as you'll see when we get to our boards. Probably, I assume Joe has him probably lower than me, and I dropped him quite a bit. Fisk on the Browns, I like, but he'd be good in D-tackle leagues, D-tackle required leagues. Sanders on the Dolphins, I love this fit. Without the tight end premium, he's not super high on my board. I'd like my tight ends to be a little more athletic than he tested at. But I do like the fit in Miami. And getting the second-round draft capital really helps. Then we'll get into some fun ones. I mentioned there were a couple of guys that had A.D. Mitchell. One of them, the Cowboys take Jonathan Brooks at 56. He would slot in as – it would be close between him and another running back we'll talk about in a sec. But I could put either one at 10 or 11. I know he'd probably be RB1 for you.
Brooks would be my RB1.
Cooper to the Bucks. All right, so now we can talk about it. 3 linebackers go in this round. Colson at 37 to the Chargers. Wilson 50 to the Eagles. Cooper 57 to the Bucks. Even though Colson goes first, he's probably third on my IDP board because he's not going to see the field immediately, and I think the other 2 are just better athletes. And Cooper, for me, Cooper goes right into that Devin White role, and is probably a better player than White was. Wilson on the Eagles should start immediately next to White, over White, next to Dean. I'm not honestly sure how they would do that alignment, but if you take him in the second round, I get to imagine he starts from day 1. So for me, it's Wilson, Cooper, Then Colson, I imagine you probably flipped at least the top two.
Yeah, Cooper's one for me by a decent margin. I don't love the Peyton Wilson player. It's a good fit. Actually, I don't know how good of a fit it is. He feels really samey with Devin White. But yeah, I still, redraft wise, definitely Wilson over Colson. But dynasty wise, I would still rather take Colson than Wilson, which will not be consensus. But yeah, Wilson's a better athlete. But there's just a risk he just turns into Drew Sanders and just gets moved to second on the D end rotation.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't see that, but I don't think he's an edge.
Yeah, I think he's a better linebacker, but I also think Drew Sanders is a better linebacker. That happened, so.
Let's see, 58 Aurora. Wow.
Close enough.
I'd have gotten it right, but just like saying it, just as like, oof.
Yeah.
To the Packers, all to the Texans, love that one. He's pretty sneaky for a pass rusher. Yeah. He's one I'm circling later in drafts, especially leagues where you don't necessarily have to start a D tackle. He's one who his pass rush win rate, if you follow some of those stats, it's up there with some of the guys, the D tackles that have enough value to play in a D line only type spot. If that makes sense. He can put up stats comparable to edges. I think double digit sacks is within his range of outcomes.
I think so too. I think it's going to be boom bust weeks for him, but
yeah,
especially early on where he'll be a part of a rotation. But
yeah, he's one I want to taxi for a year or two, but I think you could get an Oliver type breakout in year 3, year 4, Christian Barmore type breakout this past year. Like that's kind of what I think you might get. Nubin on the Bills, he actually leapt Hicks. Just this landing spot is one I've had circled for safety. His testing wasn't great. He was my DB2 coming in, so him and Hicks would be pretty close. I'd honestly just want to take the second one most likely, but
that's fair. Yeah, I would still have Hicks over him. I don't know how Buffalo would deploy their safeties there with Rapp, Edwards, and Nubin. It's like Nubin feels like the best deep safety of those options, but I don't know.
Let's see. Patrick Paul, Sinistro, Ravens would be fun. Good slot corner would be up there. Probably DB cornerback too. Rosengarten on the Niners is a good fit. Milton to the Chiefs at 64 is a good fit. Bullard to the Panthers. Hopefully he plays some cornerback and you could put him on IDP rosters then. We'll get some more running backs. Cardinals take Trey Benson. Will be a hit to his year 1 value, but you're rolling the dice on a Tajay Spears, Zamir White situation where maybe they can ascend in value the second year. This Connor is going to be the bell cow in year 1, but his contract, I believe, is up after the year. So that's an interesting one in the second round of rookie drafts. Lassiter on the Commanders is great. Leggett to the Lions kills his value a bit because he's competing with Jameson Williams probably at that point. Now we get to the one guy I have is RB2. Not sure how you feel about him in the class, but Marshawn Lloyd on the Chargers. That landing spot is just so juicy.
Yeah. When you say he's your RB2, does that mean with this mock draft or going into the draft?
With this mock draft. With the mock draft. Benson's sitting there in my 2 spot right now. But with the fact that I project Lloyd to take over the role in year 1, he probably splits, but he takes over enough of the role to matter, especially with his receiving ability and the lack of receivers there. I like Lloyd over Benson.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think first iteration of the big board. I think I did still have Benson over him, but I do think you're right. I do think Lloyd should be over Benson at this
They're
point.
close. I think I have Lloyd around like
Yeah.
11 and Benson like 15, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there. He's right
Yeah.
in there with the edges, if I remember right.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Jaylen Wright on the Giants, similar to Benson. I do think they would split more year one. I just worry he would never become the 1A there.
Yeah, and also there's a concern with the O-line. Just the offense is worse in New York right now, and for the foreseeable future than Arizona. So
yeah,
but I like Wright a lot.
Just off the cuff, I think he's my 4 just because of the draft spot over Corum, who goes a little later. But Corum, I think, can beat out his competition a little easier too and put up better numbers. Ellis on the Cardinals, I would love. That's Jonah Ellis, the edge from Utah. He's one of my sleepers. Cole Bishop on the Jets makes a lot of sense. I think he's a better deep guy than a box guy. I've seen a lot of people disagree with that. I
think we're in the minority there. Because I agree with you.
From my perspective, he just never seemed all that willing to tackle. Like, it was the weirdest tape of that, if I remember right. It's been a little bit since I evaluated DBs because I wrote an article on them really early. But if I remember, he was the one that I was just like, he never wraps his arms on guys. Like, he drives through them, but he never brings his arms to tackle. And I'm just like, what are you trying to do? I would want him as my deep safety, trying to break up passes, but he just never seemed all that willing to tackle. It was weird.
Yeah. I saw a lot of similar things, but haven't seen that like anywhere else. So it's an interesting one. Not really sure.
Yeah. Puny or the Kansas alignment at Detroit makes a ton of sense. Rattler on the Falcons would be a sneaky late round stash. Burton on the Bears. All right. We've talked about him a little bit. Burton, you and I both have higher than consensus. Both of us would probably draft him higher than this in the NFL draft, but we don't know what the off-field stuff is they talk about all the time. He's one who's going to be a huge boom bust guy that I'm willing to target in the 3rd round of rookie drafts.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I've seen a lot of people, typical draft pundits, your Dane Bruglers, Matt Millers, etc. All Daniel Jeremiah's are like, yeah, he's got 2nd round tape, but going to being at 6 schools in the past 8 years or something including high school, is a bit concerning.
Yeah, he's my wide receiver 4 on tape alone.
Tape alone, he would be top 7, somewhere in there. Top 8, somewhere in the top 8. But,
I mean, it's over Brian Thomas, so he's up there.
Yeah. He'd be in that tier for sure. But
yeah, Corley, good fit with the Broncos, especially if they were to trade Sutton or even let Sutton walk at the end of the year. Him and Mims would be a pretty good pairing with what they each excel at. So it makes a lot of sense. Dorless is locked and loaded 49er. That makes a ton of sense. Isaac on the Dolphins makes a lot of sense as well. We'll see. They've got to take an edge. Hopefully Jaylen Phillips can come back, but we'll see. Booker on the Falcons, I like that one as a sneaky late round guy. They would have a whole bunch of young edges to give shots to. I'm not sure who would emerge. That would be interesting. Theo Johnson to the Bengals. Speaking of athletic tight ends, I just wish he would have produced a little more. Trevin Wallace.
Penn State.
Trevin Wallace, linebacker, Kentucky to the Seahawks. If you weren't a 3rd rounder, I would love it. I think he still comes in as my linebacker 4 because McDonald should play him early. I don't see either Baker or Dodson keeping him off the field. He's a better.
And both are on 1-year deals, so I could, even if it is more of a redshirt year, totally see then.
Yeah, I think I have him in like that Trenton Simpson stash and just profit in the future. He honestly probably needs to sit for a year anyway and develop, but give him a high-end coach like McDonald. I'd love that. Fisher on the Colts, great. Coleman on the Rams. He's one starting to be a little push. Jim Nagy was saying he might go a lot higher than everyone's expecting. So it sounds like he might go in round 2. Cedric Gray on the Steelers. He's right there with Wallace. I like Wallace better long term, but Gray would probably see the field sooner.
Yeah, especially if Cole Holcomb can't get back to the field. So
yeah,
Holcomb or Gray and Queen is actually pretty solid pairing.
Yeah,
assuming they're starters. Robert's still under contract, right?
I don't remember honestly.
I don't either.
Even
I thought
if
I
he
saw him
is,
on the Arlen depth chart, but
even if he is though, he holds off Gray for a little bit. But Gray's a better coverage guy, and you could kind of separate him that way. The offensive
Kieran
Amagagie.
Amagagie.
The Browns make sense. Hunt. Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, trying to get to our boards. Let's see.
Yeah.
Jalix Hunt's a good stash guy, edge from Houston Christian, late round guy that I'm kind of comping to. I'm a blank on his name. The Patriots pass rusher Uche. Could break out in a couple of years as like a good pass rusher. A couple cornerbacks, some O-line. Braylon Trice on the Packers. His tape looks better than his testing, so we'll see on that one. I don't have him very high. I know you don't either, obviously.
Yeah.
Estime on the Bucks is an interesting fit next to Rachaad White. Would hurt Rachaad White, in my opinion, because Estime is a really good between the tackles grinder. I think he's going to have a Gus Edwards-like career. Javon Baker on the Ravens, downfield guy, would fit well with, say, Flowers. Let him operate more underneath. Wiley on the Panthers. They need a tight end, so that makes a lot of sense. Corum on the Raiders. Here's one. I can't remember how I put him, but I like Corum, I think, more than Wright. So I think I might have had him higher, but they're probably pretty similar grade-wise.
Yeah, that one, I think they'd both be pretty close. I like the talent of Wright more and just the explosiveness, so put him higher. But
I think Corum starts over Zamir White by partway through the year. So
yeah.
He's the better pass catcher, and he didn't catch passes in college because they had better pass catcher and running backs. So, like, Zamir White's just the between the tackles grinder guy for me. Mustafa on the Jags is a fantastic fit. Would be a lot of fun. Pratt on the Broncos makes a lot of sense to give them a whole bunch of meh quarterbacks. Hopefully he gets a shot at some point with Zach Wilson there and Stidham, but we'll see. Devondre Sweat, I don't love the news coming out on him, but we'll see. Steelers are as good of a fit as any to get him on the right track, though. So McMillan on the Rams makes some sense as a developmental slot receiver type. Good fit. And Benson, tight end to the Commanders. I like him a lot to the point that I would probably target him over Jatavian Sanders, who would go a little earlier. All right. Yeah.
100 picks. There's a lot to get through.
Yeah. We don't really have a ton of time to go through our boards. All right. Let's see. You want to talk a little bit about some of the guys you like and where you take them in rookie drafts, maybe? We'll just phrase it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the guys we haven't talked as much about.
Yeah. Checking the board again. I would be... I know we talked about the edge rushers, specifically Chop Robinson. In that spot, taking over the Brian Burns role, I do think that's someone where I would take a little higher than maybe most would. Just his first step is awesome. He does have a good amount of moves, needs a little refinement. I think he's someone who this class I don't love I know me being lower on verse than you doesn't help that, but I think Chop really has some of maybe the biggest upside in the class. I think that's just something that, especially if he falls a bit, that's worth taking a little earlier than many would expect.
Makes sense. I mean, you and I both have him top of the third round. For me, he's in kind of a tier, the top of the third, back into the second. I've got like Roman Wilson, Bo Nix, Junior Colson, Blake Corum, Troy Franklin, Jalen Polk, Trevin Wallace, and Chop all kind of grouped together.
Yeah.
From that 210 to 305, I could see any of them going kind of anywhere, depending on what your flavor you're looking for.
Yeah, what's another one for you?
Let's see. I'm trying to look and see because we kind of hit on a lot of them. Chris Braswell, I talked about a little bit. He's one. I feel like I have him too low, even here. I've got him 405, and I've got Byron Murphy over him, and then Chop Robinson, but like Darius Robinson's behind him, Johnny Newton's behind him. He's up there. It's just this defense. The IDP class is not fantastic. So you're taking shots on guys you hope get early playing time, and Braswell's going to get that if he lands in a situation like Washington.
Yeah, at the very least as a rotational spot. Yeah, no, big thing for me is is he actually going to go 40? Is he going to go in the 70s? Seems like a lot of people have forgotten about him, especially on the fantasy side. So I don't know. He's one who definitely, I think, when we get to when we actually start drafting rookies for IDP leagues, I do think he's going to slip farther than he should. I think that's a really good call there.
And I talked about Nubin and Hicks a little bit. I have them 311, 312 back to back. Where do you have the DBs?
Oh, where did I have them? Hicks, I had 312 in a tier with those second round wide receivers like Pearsall, Coleman, Franklin, then Johnny Newton, and the D tackles and Cedric Gray. Honestly, I'd probably move him up a little bit. I would take him over the D tackles, I think. And Nubin, I would have him probably top of the fourth, end of third still, behind Hicks, but not by a huge amount. So I know even Micah Hyde in that free safety role did produce. And I do think that's a decent comp. So I could see good DB2 production from him. Whereas Hicks, I think, could become a DB1, but also there's some more risk there. Just with Bates taking a lot.
Yeah, so I have them 311, 312 back to back in the same tier with Burton, Murphy, and Malachi Corley. I could see pushing them up. I have Xavier Worthy right in front of him at 310 because his landing spot was so bad. But he's not going to produce anything there for fantasy. So I could easily see pushing them up into the next tier. Let's see.
I do think, thinking about it again, that if you're in a balanced league where offense doesn't super outweigh defense, that I probably would take Hicks and Nubin over Coleman, Franklin, Pearsall. Just those are uncertain target shares. All those guys could be the third target on their team. But same with Worthy.
I just know if they are better than that, then you're not going to get them for very cheap for long. So getting them in the third round in one of these scenarios is really wild. So it just kind of shows you the depth of this class. But when you start putting landing spots against some of these guys, I've got 5 receivers in the first. I've got 1, 2 in the second round. So all of a sudden you're looking a lot. I'm basically telling you, I think most of them are kind of depth guys that you're hoping they can be wide receiver 3s when you need to plug them in your lineup. So for as much as people talk about the depth of this receiver class, you're hoping they can plug in when someone ahead of them gets hurt, or maybe they develop into something better. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally agree. In my first round, I had 5 wide receivers, and then I had 3 in the second round, 2 of them being at 11 and 12. So I think, similar somewhere there. I think just the specific names were switched around a bit with me being higher on Polk than you and
Yeah.
lower on someone else than you were.
The only one is Polk's the only one that fell out of round 2.
Oh, yeah.
for
You
me.
only had him like 4 spots
Yeah,
lower
he's
than I did.
303. I just have Troy Franklin ahead of him as the only other one. That's just because the Jags, I think, if he were to hit, he could hit and be the one there. So it's a little tricky. But,
yeah. That's what
And then
tight end wise, it's weird. I know.
Yeah, I have Sanders in the mid to late 3rd, Sinnott at the end of the 4th. So
I had Theo Johnson at the end of the 4th, Sanders top of the 4th. Really, the 4th round, I feel like there's a bigger tier. Sinnott should be somewhere in there. I also did throw in Spencer Rattler, quarterback, just another quarterback in there.
Yeah,
but I like him a lot. So
I threw Wilshire, and he's not even taken on your board because my expectation is basically because it's only a 3-round mock, you're probably looking at a few running backs that went in round 4, round 5 that are going to push in there. Shipley being one of them. So,
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I'm blanking on some of the other guys. Bucky Irving, maybe you put Estimate in there, so that makes sense.
Braylon Allen, I could see if he goes to a good spot.
Yeah, Braylon Allen. Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah.
A little over, but good exercise. Looking forward to doing this again next week with the actual draft.
Yes. Which will be good. And draft is 2 days away. Crazy.
Come on, Pats, do not trade back. Take Drake Maye. You know you want to.
It's the right decision. But I'll look brilliant if they take McCarthy. So but good luck to everyone in your teams. Another reminder to check out IDP Plus. We are doing a staff mock draft tonight that will be published in the morning, I believe, some point tomorrow. So take a look at that. We will also be doing a live show Thursday at whatever time the draft is at. Switching time zones around, so I don't remember what it is.
8 Eastern time.
8 Eastern time. Yeah. Drop in for a live chat. And
I think there's Friday night live stream as well.
I believe so.
Which I think that one's 7, I want to say, when the draft starts. Which is probably, we're going to have a lot of offense in round 1. If you want some more hard-hitting IDP, I'm guessing you're probably going to be more in tune for round 2, because that's where you're going to start seeing linebackers, and you're going to have linebackers ranked against the edges. So that's where you're going to get more of that good IDP juiciness.
Yep. And if over the past all of last week and then throughout this week, we've had our division previews coming out. So take a look at those to see what each team needs and kind of get an idea for where those top IDP players go, if it's a good spot. So, yeah. And I think that is it from us. So thank you guys again for jumping in. We will see you next week. And may the force be with you and good luck on the drafts. Hope your teams don't screw it up.